Back on the Young Turks, and I want to talk to Tim Carr. He is the campaign director for Free Press. They've been at the absolute forefront or fighting for net neutrality. Today we had a decision on net neutrality by the FCC. It was a 3-2 decision. We want to bring Tim on here for some analysis. Welcome to the show, Tim.
How are you doing, Jay?
Great. So first thing we should do is break it down. Tell us the different parts of this decision and what it means.
I'm sorry, Tim, could you repeat that question?
Yes. Can you summarize for the audience what the different parts of this decision, like for wireless, landlines, etc., what did they decide?
Well, what happened today is that the FCC voted on a rule that they are now calling net neutrality, which is nothing of the sort. And the reason that we don't see this as net neutrality, because it is not extending the sort of net neutrality equal protections to the wireless realm, mobile internet, that we expect. And they're sort of splitting the internet into two and looking at the wireline internet as one point of access and the wireless internet as another. And they're allowing the carriers to do all sorts of discriminatory practices in the wireless space that we don't feel meets that standard. So what we saw today was just a classic case of regulatory capture, where the chairman of the FCC was basically negotiating on behalf of AT&T and Comcast and the National Cable and Telecommunications Association to try to craft a compromise. And it was really more of a capitulation because we lost a lot of the fundamental standards for openness that we expect in any sort of net neutrality rule.
Now, before we get into the capitulation and why they did that, again, I want a little bit more detail on both sides of this. So for all intents and purposes, do we have net neutrality for landlines, or is there loopholes in that as well? Let's start with that.
We don't have net neutrality in any respect throughout this rule. It is so riddled with loopholes, with language regarding what's called reasonable management of network and allowances for special services. It's also rooted on a very shaky legal foundation. We have been pushing the FCC to reassert its authority over broadband over what's called Title II. And what the chairman tried to do here was craft a rule under Title I authority of the Act, and of the Communications Act. It's a very, very shaky legal footing. They created some very convoluted scenario by which they would have the power to enforce what sort of standards that they were putting into this rule. But it is riddled with so many loopholes that it allows the carriers and internet service providers to create sorts of specialized services, fast lanes, to implement what's called a paid prioritization system, where very powerful companies can pay for special access to end users and really tilt the level playing field in a way that fundamentally undermines the open architecture. So on the wireless space, very bad. We're very concerned about that because increasingly people are using wireless mobile devices as their first point of access to broadband. This is that there's a higher percentage of people in low-income communities and communities of color that are getting on the line this way. So we want to make sure there are equal protections there. But overall, across all internet access points, we want to close these loopholes so that ISPs can't create specialized services, they can't prioritize some of their products over others. I mean, most of the ISPs, as you know, are also in the business of providing video services. They're in the business of providing telephone services. And so they have an economic incentive to discriminate against other competitors that are offering online services. And so those are major concerns that weren't sufficiently addressed in the order that was passed by a 3-2 majority today.
All right, Tim, I want to dive into the weeds one more time here because I think that these distinctions are incredibly important in how things wind up playing out. When you talk about basically the reasonable management loophole, right, does that mean that the companies can decide to charge more or less based on their reasonable management, and then the FCC, if they find it unreasonable, would have to overrule them? Or is it the assumption that they have to charge the same on landlines, and they would have to seek an exemption from the FCC to do anything different?
Well, the way that the system is set up is that in order for them to determine what a reasonable management guideline is, somebody has to make a complaint to the FCC, and then they have to go into a lengthy investigation, and they determine that. And ultimately, what will happen with any of these complaints is that we expect the ISPs to challenge the FCC's authority to even hear these complaints in court. And so it's left up to consumers to file a complaint, and the FCC then goes through a process where they try to adjudicate that. But the ISPs, and even Verizon has already mentioned it today, said that they fully intend to challenge the FCC's authority in a court in court. And there was a court challenge that happened in 2008 and 2009 when Comcast challenged the FCC's authority to sanction them for blocking access to BitTorrent, the file sharing. From that challenge, or that ruling, was thrown out in court, in the federal appeals court earlier this year, where they said the FCC lacked the legal authority under its Title I classification to do that. The FCC today has said that they think they have the legal authority to do this under Title I. So the full expectation here with this weak ruling that is the moment any of these reasonable network management challenges go before the FCC, you're going to see another court battle and get this thrown out again. This is why we said that at the very baseline, you have to restore the FCC's authority under Title II, so these kind of discriminatory practices are sanctioned by a very clear authority on this. And Title II, which is under the 1996 Telecommunications Act, very clearly establishes the FCC's authority to serve as a watchdog over open internet standards.
So when we look back at the bigger picture now, some people in Washington are saying that, hey, listen, the Republicans aren't happy with this, and Verizon and Comcast have said they're not happy with this because they wanted the ability to be able to charge whatever they want, so they had to compromise. And some of the Democrats like yourself aren't happy with it because you didn't get everything you wanted. Well, look, it's a compromise, so suck it up. Is that fair?
No, this is not a compromise. This is a capitulation. We have a massive squandered opportunity here. We had a majority vote at the FCC in favor of net neutrality a year ago. We had a president who was very outspoken in support of net neutrality and made a campaign promises and several pledges while in office to get this done. Our organization, Free Press, working with others like Move On and Triple C and Credo, had delivered 2 million public comments to the FCC. So there was clearly public consensus in the public comment process on this. The FCC basically had a red card laid out before it to make this rule. They had political coverage. They had popular support. They had the support, allegedly, even of President Obama, at least rhetorically. And the only thing that stopped them was a very powerful and well-mobilized phone and cable lobby. This was a squandered opportunity. Chairman really, really blew it, and we're now back to ground zero, back to the starting point where we have this very, very unclear protection for net neutrality, and we have increasingly ISPs moving into a space where they want to charge extra for tiered services, where they want to discriminate against products, online products that they don't like, that compete with their own. And we needed a decisive action here. This was nothing close to a compromise. That said, the chairman is trying to paint it as such. But if you look at some of the organizations that he states are supporting his position, a lot of them are just groups that are supported by the phone and cable company. I mean, there really isn't a broad-based consensus around this in any respect, and he could have certainly done a lot better.
Tim, when we go to an even broader picture, when you look at what happened here, you said overwhelming popular support, political cover, the president said he was going to do it. You add all this up, and yet the companies still won, right? Does it unfortunately engender a certain degree of hopelessness that no matter what you do, I mean, 1 million signatures was enough, 2 million, right? No matter what you do, it doesn't matter. The large corporations and Republican president, Democratic president, it doesn't matter. the big corporations are going to win no matter what.
Well, with anything in Washington, these sorts of things take a great deal of time. They take a great deal of organizing. This is a relatively new issue. The net neutrality debate has only been around for about 4 or 5 years, and we were hoping with this president, we were hoping with this FCC that we would get these rules into place, we'd get these protections back into place, and have the open internet protected as it was originally intended to be. Now we're looking at a campaign that's going to stretch out over several years. We have a Congress coming in January that worries us. AT&T has heavily lobbied this group. The new members of Congress have take considerable amounts of campaign contributions from AT&T. So if we're going to win on this, we're in Congress. It's going to take a long time. There is a chance that we could win on this in the courts. We're going to fight that fight. There is a chance that we could win on this elsewhere at the FCC. They're still looking at whether or not to reclassify broadband under Title II. That's a fight worth fighting. So there are a lot of things we can do, but I would be lying to you if I didn't say that today was a major setback.
Yeah, Tim, let me tell you something, okay? Look, I don't want to make people hopeless, and I don't believe that. I think that in the long run, we're going to change the system so that the corporations don't have the kind of power that they have now. But, and you go into the courts, that makes sense. You've got a better shot there, et cetera, although corporations are also taking over the courts. As you see, with the New York Times had a great piece about that, about how the Roberts Court has been incredibly pro-business, right? And they back it up with facts and numbers and statistics based on the number of times they've ruled in favor of business interests, et cetera. All that being said, I mean, in Congress, I got to be honest with you. I mean, if you can't do it under a president who absolutely said he would do it, an FCC commissioner who absolutely said he would do it, when you had all of the popular opinion on your side, they're never going to do it, man. They're never going to do it. The way that this system is structured now, the Borg, the corporate Borg, will always win.
Well, I mean, you pointed at the bigger issue, right? That net neutrality is a piece of a larger picture in the struggle to fix our democracy. We have to change campaign finance issues. We have to figure out how to reverse this United decision. We have to reform the media and protect net neutrality. It's a part of a larger picture, a larger, better democracy movement. I think there's a lot of frustration in there that can be tapped into both on the left and the right. It's amazing on how many issues there's common ground, for example, between progressives and even the Tea Party. And I think the challenge for organizers such as Free Press and others out there is to try to figure out where that common ground is, try to tap into that general frustration with the way our democracy functions right now, and to move these various battles forward in concert. I think this is a real challenge for the larger, better democracy movement, is to try to figure that out, try to fix the system, which is as you say, is just so corrupt at its very foundation. But that's a fight worth fighting, and I hope we can have happier days than today in the future.
All right, Tim, I want to ask you one last question. Look, my opinion on that is all these issues, we're going to lose on all of them, okay? Because as long as the system is set up as it is, we have no chance against the power of that kind of money, right? And look at the people in power. They don't give a damn about anything but that kind of money, okay? And so we all have to band together to actually change the system. If we don't take away the power of corporate money, all of these campaigns, whether it's you on net neutrality, whether it's healthcare, whether it's financial reform, we're all going to get slaughtered, okay? So I think we got to do a whole different thing where we band together and actually throw a monkey wrench into the middle of this system. Otherwise, the whole country is in massive trouble. Now, having said that, and we agree on that, final thing for you. There's this constant debate about Obama. Is he doing the best he can, and he's doing incremental work, and eventually that will lead to better results, and people are being impatient? Or, no, he's just doing the same thing that any pro-establishment person would do and go along with the corporations, et cetera, et cetera. With this decision, do you fall firmly on one side or no?
That's a difficult one for me because we really worked hard in the election year and in the early days of this administration to make sure that net neutrality was a primary issue. And he came out, he was very forceful on this, on the election trail, when he released his Internet and Tech Policy platform. In early 2009, he had net neutrality atop the list. I think that this president has, he has won a couple of victories, or he would consider them victories over the last week. It's a shame that he'll try to paint net neutrality as a victory because it's nothing of the sort. It makes me suspicious of all the other victory claims that he makes, because if this White House comes out and says that this rule is a net neutrality victory, I think we have reason to be suspicious that this president isn't being fully honest when he speaks about true reform, because what happened at the FCC was nothing of the sort. It was regulatory capture. It was a chairman that was merely trying to appease the most powerful corporate interests, and who completely abdicated his responsibility to the public.
He's a politician that loves to hang mission accomplished signs, and he is a willing accomplice in the media. The articles I read on it today say that it was major reform at the FCC in favor of net neutrality. So,
well, there you go.
There you go. I mean, and what do they call healthcare reform? Major reform, historic reform. Wall Street reform, same thing, historic, major. Hang the banner. So we're in a world of trouble, man. And I'll tell you, my last comment on it is that to the audience, look, I know how hard free press worked. And I don't know any advocacy group on any issue that worked harder, to give you guys credit. And that's why today on this issue is so dispiriting, because if you guys couldn't do it, and look, the HCAN and healthcare, I was dubious about where the money was coming from, what their interests were, etc. You guys are the real deal, right? And you worked as hard as you possibly could, and you lined up all the ducks. You didn't do anything wrong. You crossed your T's, you dotted your I's, and you lost anyway. That's why, to me, in so many ways, if this isn't evidence enough for people that the system is broken, I don't know what it's going to take to convince them.
Well, thanks for that, Chegg. It was very disappointing today to see the FCC chairman paint us as extremists in his effort to to paint himself as a reasonable, moderate view on this. I mean, we represent the voices of millions of Americans who've been active on this issue, and to have a chairman say that the public outcry on this represents an extremist view was a profound disappointment.
Right. And that's what they do. When you hear moderate, run for the hills, because it doesn't mean moderate at all. Tim represents the moderates because that's what a great majority of the country believes. We all believe in net neutrality, okay? Right wing, left wing, doesn't matter. We all want the same freedom on the internet, okay? When they say moderate, they don't mean moderate. They mean corporatists. They mean AT&T, Verizon, and Comcast have agreed to it, okay? So unfortunately, that's the way Washington works. Tim, keep your head up. We'll band together and we'll fight the system together. Don't worry. We'll get them on another day.